Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you are well. You amazing, beautiful, wonderful people. This is video 2. That's it, baby. This is 2 of 2, and it's still Monday. I hope you're having a fantastic Monday. I hope the week is a good week this week. And look, I must premise this account and premise this video. Yeah, premise this video. Because some of you who perhaps are coming along and you haven't seen this channel before, or you're new to this channel, where's my stance on the Idaho 4 case? My stance on the Idaho 4 case is that I am well aware, because I'm not an idiot, that Bryan Kohberger could have done this crime. But my stance upon Bryan Kohberger at this time is that we haven't seen enough evidence to be able to say that Bryan Kohberger is the person who did this beyond a reasonable doubt, and therefore he should be executed for it. I hope I have made myself clear. Again, I'm not an idiot. I do understand that he could have possibly did this. I do feel that some of the evidence may suggest that he could have potentially had something to do with it, but there are elements of this case that would also say that he perhaps wasn't even here. And later on in this video, are we going to touch on a fact, an actual fact, that would suggest that perhaps the FBI absolutely knew where Bryan Kohberger was, and did they have access to the very records that would tell you that? So look, this is what we're going to do. I want to go through some notes with you. Going to go through some notes that me and my man Eddie, because what have we got at the moment? We've got a call, right? We've got this call. And what do we know about this call? We've got this call that they seemingly want to suggest that this call happened at 11:58 in the morning, right? 11:58, just before noon. And I have issues with this call. And again, I've said this multiple times, and I know that people do keep pointing out that I do tend to repeat some of the things that I've said previously. Guess what? I don't give a fuck. There are people joining this channel every single day. We've took on approximately 1,800 new subscribers in the last 4 weeks, and sometimes people haven't seen me talk about things, and I'll get emails that request that I talk about things that I've already spoken about. So what do? Say no, or do we mention it again? But anyway, that's by and by. So look, what was the purpose of the 911 call? What was its purpose? To try and offer a time, to validate the time of the attack. And how do they do that? By mentioning the time of the attack in the video, in the call, in the what you're listening to. They have to mention that somebody came into this property at 4 o'clock. But if you rarely listen closely, it's like when the person says on the call, there's something happening. There's something happening at this house. Not happened. They specifically state that there is something happening at the house. Now, you could read into that any which way you want, but I'm reading into it like, I believe that there was a call made earlier, and the call that you're listening to perhaps isn't a call that was played or took place when you're led to believe it is. And I know it's tinfoil hat. I know it's tinfoil hat territory, but what is the one thing that's missing in this call? There are no sirens in this call. There is no sirens, despite the mayor stating that he could hear sirens. Multiple sirens alerting him to an issue in the area. And yet this call, there is absolutely no sound of sirens whatsoever. Nothing. Again, if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. And when you listen to the people on this call, it's seemingly suggesting that whatever happened, it's the first that they've known about it. They're either real good actors and actresses, or this call happened just after the attack. Just after the attack. But I'll go through these, right? So the attempt of the call was to conceal the time of the attack. Dylan Mortensen seeing a first responder. And what do I mean by that? She literally states, or there is a statement that would suggest that she said that she saw a fireman, what she thought was a fireman. Now, they couldn't get rid of that. They couldn't get rid of it because it was in the interview. I'm guessing that it was recorded and it was sent over to the defense. So she physically said it. And how do they try and get round that? They try and get round the fact that she'd seen a first responder potentially at this property by trying to rubbish her and make out that she doesn't know a fucking thing she's saying, that she's non-compos mentis. She don't know whether she's dreaming or not. Do you know what I mean? So you can't really take everything she says as gospel, because she could be a little bit confused, or you'd latch on to that. So hold on a second. What made you think that this person was a fireman? What made you say fireman for a start? But anyway, the actual time and knowledge of the attack is well understood by not just Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, but numerous others who also had received info from Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk. We know that there was multiple calls around this area. We know that now. Around this crime, there was multiple communications, there were pictures being taken, and there was communication to parents as well. So why was it that everyone's being messaged? There was people who had knowledge of this. It seems that this, what we're hearing now is suggesting that some of the earlier stuff that came out that was appearing on Snapchat or whatever it was actually factual. So when people were talking about what could have possibly happened in this house, it was because of communications coming from multiple people around this property. But anyway, this is my man Eddie. As I said long ago, Dylan Mortensen would have had prior knowledge of the attack, as did BF, before DM saw the male who faced her. Now, we have evidence of the timeline that backs up Dylan Mortensen and BF. Why and when they became afraid. The PCA is complicit in stating the intruder charged with the attack. We now know the FBI had the means to pinpoint the precise location of the phone with the capability of 186,000 miles per second travel from the phone to the tower resources. Recall I stated the above before, and recall I stated the above before the above info was released, and which was they pin located Kohberger, his phone and car, and the PCA. Which again, what we're talking about here is AT&T, they couldn't apparently produce the time advance records to anybody. There was only specific agencies before March 2023, whenever it was, that they could go wider with it. But the FBI was one of the agencies who had the technology to absolutely find out where Bryan Kohberger was. The FBI could do that. So why does the time advance reports not exist in this case? Why do they want to try and bury the time advance report? And why are the likes of Cy Ray willing to put his neck on the line pro bono to try and say, hold on a second, this information that you're saying is Bryan Kohberger and he's driving through this route? Where's the very piece of information that would solidify that when one of the lead agencies on it had access to it? It makes no sense, does it? It makes absolutely no sense. But anyway, not only did they know where he was located by the FBI in their determination, phone to resources, but he was physically being surveilled also, which I believe that he was being surveilled because of the other case, the Dana Smithers case. If Kohberger escaped their surveillance and committed 4 murders, an arrest would have been very shortly after, and it didn't happen. So if he would have been under surveillance and he escaped their surveillance and then 4 people wound up dead, Kohberger would have been arrested immediately. They'd have arrested him immediately. So what we have to ascertain here is, was Bryan Kohberger being watched? Was he being watched by the FBI? Bearing in mind what we know, that there was a grand jury convened and Bryan Kohberger's own parents had to be involved in that, and this woman had been missing for a period of time from Bryan Kohberger's local area, Pennsylvania, and she had been found deceased. Lo and behold, Bryan Kohberger is in this situation here that we find, and the aftermath of Dana Smithers, which he is eventually ruled out of. But what do we have here? What do we have in the Bryan Kohberger and the evidence against Bryan Kohberger? We have DNA, which there doesn't seem to be any solid, concrete conclusion. Even Riley Nolan turning around and saying, well, she thought that it said that Bryan Kohberger's his DNA was on the sheath, but the very report no longer exists. There is no report. You can't see the work because it didn't save the work. Are you joking? Do you genuinely think that if there was an absolute chain of custody that worked all the way through and showed every step of the way and took you from point A to point B and concrete evidence of Bryan Kohberger, that they wouldn't have had that? That would have been like a trophy. But for some reason, everybody seemingly can't remember anything. They think they know or they don't know all of this, and nothing exists.
You just have to trust us, bro. You just have to trust us.
Really? Really? Let me know down below what you think. Well, again, we're talking about this every day because we're trying to balance the books. There are so many people who think that this recent information that has come out, the Amazon purchase, the car, and because they've drawn a map and shown the car moon, it's Bryan Kohberger's car. When the reality is we do not have, at this stage, any concrete evidence. All we have is circumstantial evidence. But I believe that the FBI knew where Bryan Kohberger was. I believe that they knew where he was. And that's just me. And you can shoot me down in flames. Prove me otherwise. Prove me otherwise. But when the FBI absolutely had access to the time advance report, but they decided to not use it, and now all of a sudden they want to make out that it doesn't exist, that to me causes a massive concern. But anyway, love you all, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Mwah.